non-atherosclerotic carotid artery disease and its management. The majority of carotid artery disease encountered by vascular specialists is primarily the majority of the carotid artery disease encountered by vascular specialists is primarily atherosclerotic, but there are a few non-atherosclerotic and the carotid artery pathologies which have clinical implications. We shall focus on carotid stenosis after radiotherapy and recurrent carotid artery stenosis here. Incidence in USA, 40,000 people had CA head and neck in 2012, with 75% of them undergoing radiotherapy. There were 9,000 cases of Hodgkin's lymphoma and 70,000 cases of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, with 30% of them cases of Hodgkin's lymphoma undergoing radiotherapy and 18% of non-Hodgkin lymphoma undergoing radiotherapy. In all, 50,000 people underwent RT, with a 25% incidence of carotid stenosis after RT that amounted to 12,500 patients, and there was 6% incidence of these stenosis after endarterectomy. In India, 45% of all cancers are head and neck cancer. So there is a huge load of patients who present with post CA induced RT. Carotid stenosis after radiotherapy epidemiology. A number of case control studies have demonstrated an increased prevalence of carotid stenosis from 16% to 55% among patients who have undergone neck irradiation. Association is irrespective of age and comorbidities and seen even in the very young. Neck irradiation has also been shown to be with increased cerebrovascular events as high as 2.6% compared with 0.29% in matched controls. Factors associated with risk of developing carotid stenosis after neck irradiation include older age, smoking, heart disease. But this data is inconsistent regarding the effect of these. The risk of developing carotid stenosis is directly proportional with time. In a study of 367 patients with a history of irradiation for head and neck malignancy, the relative risk for stroke was 10.1% after more than 10 years of follow-up, and 15-year risk of stroke was 12%. The pathogenesis. Radiation arthritis, although histologically similar to primary atherosclerosis, but it results from a distinct mechanism of arterial injury. The endothelial cell of vasa vasorum and artery proper undergoes swelling followed by vacuolization and vesicle deposition. This in turn causes platelet aggregation and fibrin deposition, which results in obliteration of the capillary lumen and resulting in focal necrosis and fibrosis of the media, which in turn causes periadventitial fibrosis and extrinsic compression and narrowing of the vessel lumen. There is impairment of release of nitrous oxide and prostacyclin, which are protective. So this mechanism is also impaired. There is endothelium-derived growth factors and factors kappa B, adhesion molecule, cytokine production. All these factors, they cause stenosis of the vessel. Carotid artery intima media thickness (CIMT) is, as measured by Doppler ultrasound, has shown to be directly associated with risk of stroke. A significant increase in CIMT after neck irradiation has been demonstrated in multiple case control studies. Increase in CIMT are found with increasing doses of radiation and with increasing age. Significantly increased CIMT is demonstrated at doses higher than 35 Gauss. This is suggestive of a threshold dose that is required for carotid artery injury, that is 35 Gauss. A detailed history and physical examination to distinguish symptomatic and asymptomatic carotid stenosis should be done. In physical examination, there should be a thorough inspection of the head and neck with attention to scars from prior neck reconstruction, to note for presence of patent or healed tracheostomy sites, and auscultation for carotid bruit with a thorough neurological examination should be done. Symptomatic patients may present with amaurosis fugax, transient ischemic attacks, and stroke. CDS, carotid Doppler surveillance, is a mainstay of diagnostic evaluation and is indicated for patients after RT. But since radiation-induced stenosis rarely develops until 5 to 10 years after treatment, No consensus exists regarding when screening should begin. Carotid Doppler surveillance should be performed for all symptomatic patients. Any patient with a positive carotid Doppler surveillance should be further evaluated with MRI, CTA, DSA for complete evaluation of lesion and pre-operative planning. CS following the radiation presents with diffuse and atypical lesions, usually in the common carotid artery and distal internal carotid artery. A study by Talarita suggested that the location and stenosis was 16% in the common carotid artery and 38% in the distal ICA. On angiography, the radiation-induced lesions appear significantly longer with maximal area of stenosis at end of lesion rather than in the center as seen in primary atherosclerotic lesions. Treatment general considerations. The decision to treat with the medical, surgical, endovascular treatment should be individualized. Symptomatic patients greater than 50% stenosis and asymptomatic patients with greater than 80% stenosis should undergo treatment. In asymptomatic patients, the more stable morphology of post-radiation stenosis makes it more appropriate to manage these patients medically and monitor the degree of stenosis for longer. This is an important slide which shows the conditions favoring different kinds of treatment modalities. Conditions favoring carotid endarterectomy are age greater than 70 years, severe aortic arch calcification, type 3 arch, carotid artery tortuosity, circumferential heavy plaque calcification, ulcerated soft plaque on the duple, near occlusive lesions, and extensive plaques greater than 1.5 centimeter. Factors which favor carotid artery stenting are prior neck irradiation, prior radical neck dissection or laryngectomy, patent tracheostomy, prior carotid endarterectomy, history of cranial nerve injuries, proximal common carotid artery stenosis below the level of clavicle, distal ICA stenosis above C2 level, and symptomatic carotid stenosis with one of the following: congestive heart failure with EF less than 30%, severe uncorrectable coronary artery disease, and oxygen-dependent COPD. Factors which favor medical management: life expectancy less than 3 years, asymptomatic patients with any of the following, that is CHF with EF less than 30%, severe uncorrectable CAD, and oxygen-dependent COPD. Carotid stenting, it is preferred, as we have discussed, it is preferred for most symptomatic patients as it eliminates risk of cranial nerve injury associated with dissection in irradiated field. Patient with calcified type 3 arches and near occlusive or ulcerated plaque, risk of stroke from carotid stenting may outweigh the added risk of cranial nerve injury in post-RT endarterectomy. Carotid stenting and carotid endarterectomy shall be discussed in detail later on. In carotid endarterectomy, CA may be preferred in young patients with minimal comorbidities, even if they are anatomical ideal candidates for stenting due to higher rate of restenosis after carotid stent placement. In older patients or those with multiple comorbidities, endarterectomy after RT should be preserved for those patients with anatomical factors that preclude stent placement. Medical management, there are no specific studies and there are no specific recommendations. Antihypertensive treatment, smoking cessation, statin medication goal should be to maintain LDL below 10 milligram per deciliter, and glucose control are components of best medical management, which are used for carotid. The same should be formulated in post-RT patients as well. Open surgical approach, the baseline principles are as same as carotid endarterectomy, but a few differences. Difficult this is a difficult dissection, GA is preferred. The normal tissue planes are obliterated from prior neck dissection or irradiation, coupled with prolonged operating time. So in such a scenario, GA is preferred. Longitudinal neck incision is preferred as it can be extended, particularly when a prior ipsilateral neck dissection incision is present or when the lesion is diffuse or extended into distal ICA. Identification and preservation of vagus, hypoglossal, superior laryngeal nerve is necessary, along with glossopharyngeal and marginal mandibular during high dissections of ICA. Conventional endarterectomy is preferred to eversion endarterectomy because of atypical nature of lesions and is much more challenging due to radiation-induced fibrosis, which obliterates endarterectomy plane. Reconstructions are usually by patch angioplasty. Interposition graft using GSP or prosthetic conduit may be needed if endarterectomy leads to an attenuated vessel wall leading to segmental resection. or if endarterectomy becomes impossible due to severe radiation arthritis. In setting of patent tracheostomy, autogenous vein patch or conduit is preferred. Subclavian artery to carotid artery bypass graft is preferred if there is extensive involvement of the common carotids. If extensive dissection is done, a myocutaneous flap should be used to provide adequate closure. Figure A represents a patch angioplasty. Figure B is common carotid to ICA bypass with GSV. And figure C represents the subclavian to common carotid bypass. The meta-analysis of multiple studies demonstrated that for patients undergoing surgical revascularization or stent placement, there was no significant difference in 30-day mortality or combined stroke and death rate. In symptomatic patients, in the surgical group, the 30-day mortality was 2.6% and the combined stroke and death rate was 2.7%. In symptomatic patients who underwent carotid stenting, the 30-day mortality was 5.1%, whereas the combined stroke and death rate was 5.1%. In asymptomatic patients who underwent surgery, the 30-day mortality was 0% and the combined stroke and death rate was 1.1%. Whereas for carotid stenting in the asymptomatic patient, the 30-day mortality was 1.4% and the combined stroke and death rate was 2.3%. The rate of permanent nerve palsy is 0.6%. Restenosis of post-RT stenting was 18% in carotid stent placement and 10% after surgical revascularization. Although 30-day outcomes of carotid stent placement are similar to primary atherosclerosis, long-term results are significantly lower. Follow-up: after endarterectomy or carotid artery stenting in post-radiotherapy patients, post-operative monitoring for 24 to 48 hours should include an initial inpatient neurological examination. After endarterectomy, indefinite antiplatelet medication should be prescribed. After stenting, dual antiplatelet therapy for 6 weeks followed by aspirin for life. And follow-up after endarterectomy or stenting with physical examination and Doppler should be done every 6 months for the first year, followed by annually thereafter. Based upon the different kinds of studies, SPACE, SAPPHIRE, CAVITAS, EVA, and CREST, rate of restenosis ranged between 3 to 12% for endarterectomy and 2 to 31% for stenting. Patients with high-grade carotid restenosis, that is greater than 70% by Doppler, the 5-year cumulative risk of cerebrovascular event, including TIAs, was 23%, with most of the events occurring in the first year. Predictors of restenosis include age, female gender, history of head and neck cancer, diabetes, smoking, dyslipidemia, residual stenosis after stent placement, and if a large number of stents are deployed. Restenosis is 5 times more common after endarterectomy with primary closure than if a patch is used. No difference was found for rates of instant restenosis after stenting between different carotid stents or embolic protection device. Early restenosis after endarterectomy or stenting is due to intimal hyperplasia. Late restenosis represents a recurrence of atherosclerotic disease. HP of early restenotic plaque has less calcification, more luminal thrombus, a smaller lipid core, whereas the late recurrent stenotic plaque demonstrate marked macrophage infiltration, increased calcification, and a larger lipid core, making them histologically indistinguishable from primary atherosclerosis. Marked inflammatory response is associated with early restenosis, and after stent placement and post-interventional rise in leukocyte count and CRP is associated with early restenosis. Clinical findings: a good pertinent history should be taken. Symptoms of cerebrovascular events, atherosclerotic risk factors, and medical comorbidities, including history of cranial nerve injuries with complete evaluation of vascular and neurological system should be done. Diagnostic evaluation: Doppler ultrasound should be performed every 6 months for patients with stenosis greater than 50%. In Doppler ultrasound, intimal hyperplasia is observed in early restenosis and it appears homogeneous and equilucent. In late restenosis, there is heterogeneity with marked luminal irregularities. Carotid restenosis involves the distal extent of endarterectomy or the proximal or distal extent of the stent. Therefore, a CT angio, MR angio, or conventional angiogram should be obtained prior to intervention to determine the extent of the lesion. This will also help with decision making between an open or endovascular approach as well as pre-op planning. Treatment. History of previous endarterectomy has been identified as posing a high surgical risk, for which stenting is preferred over surgical revascularization. Patient with recurrent carotid artery stenosis greater than 50% who have cerebrovascular symptoms attributed to stenosis should be revascularized unless life expectancy is low and high level of disability is present. For symptomatic patients with stenosis greater than 80%, decision should be individualized. Here also carotid stenting and endarterectomy can be performed, but the factors that determined have been spoken earlier. So the main benefit of carotid artery stenting for treating both asymptomatic and symptomatic patients with recurrent stenosis following endarterectomy or stenting is avoiding difficult redo dissection, because these lesions originate from intimal hyperplasia. Plaque embolization and perioperative stroke risk are lesser than primary stenting. CA is not possible in patients with difficult type 3 arch anatomy, extensive calcifications, ulcerated plaque morphology, or damaged stents. Redo carotid endarterectomy. In young patients with minimal comorbidities, even if anatomically they are feasible for stenting, redo endarterectomy may be preferred because of high rate of restenosis after stenting. In older patients, redo endarterectomy should be reserved for those with anatomic factors precluding stent placement. Medical management, it is antihypertensive treatment, smoking cessation, statins, and glucose control. Reoperative surgical revascularization. Here, the steps are similar to the endarterectomy with a few major differences that are because of extensive and tedious dissection and prolonged operating time, GI is usually preferred. The previous neck incision should be used. Vagus and hypoglossal become adherent to planes of previous dissection. So, meticulous dissection should be done to preserve this. Most common site of recurrence is previous endarterectomy site. However, stenosis may be observed at proximal or distal extent of previous arteriotomy or clamp site of common carotids. Intimal hyperplasia may make separation of layers of arterial wall impossible, necessitating patch angioplasty without endarterectomy. Venous or prostatic bypass is indicated for extensive disease in 1/3 of the cases. Stenting versus endarterectomy for restenosis after carotid endarterectomy. Two recent meta-analyses compare repeat endarterectomy to stenting for recurrent carotid stenosis after CEA. First study was by Fokema, which included 13 studies and 1132 patients. There was no difference in outcome of stroke, death, or combined preoperative stroke or death between CEA and CAS. The endarterectomy, it resulted in 2.7%, whereas stenting had 2.3%. There was no difference in symptomatic and asymptomatic patients. Cranial nerve injury was noted in 5.5%, bleeding 2.7%, and wound infection was noted in 0.2% in the redo CEA group. Restenosis rate of greater than 70% for redo CEA was 7.7%, and for stenting it was 4%, which was not a statistically significant difference. Second meta-analysis was done by two, which included around 4,400 patients from 50 studies. There was no significant difference between baseline characteristics or comorbidities between patients who underwent endarterectomy or stenting for recurrent stenosis after endarterectomy, but the duration of follow-up was significantly longer for redo endarterectomy, around 50 months, and for stenting it was 24 months. No significant difference was noted in the perioperative stroke between different treatment modalities within the subgroups. Significant differences was in restenosis rate between redo endarterectomy and stenting at 1.7% versus 8.3%, and at 2 years it was 2.6% versus 9.8%, and at 5 years it was 4.4 versus 13.5%. Surgical revascularization for in-stent restenosis. Endarterectomy with stent removal for in-stent restenosis may be necessary in such cases of stent kinking, fracture, or erosion through the vessel wall. Length of the longitudinal arteriotomy will depend on the length of the implanted stent. The stent should be removed in toto carefully to avoid penetration through the thin arterial wall. The intimal endarterectomy should be continued until the proximal and distal resection planes are free from the atherosclerotic debris. Reconstruction may be performed with a venous or prosthetic patch. If stent is adherent to arterial wall, reconstruction options like ICA to ECA bypass, common carotid to ICA bypass, or subclavian artery to ICA bypass may be done. Results from 15 patients in a multicentral prospective registry indicated that surgical revascularization for in-stent carotid stenosis is safe and durable. Endovascular management of in-stent restenosis: we can use percutaneous balloon angioplasty, we can use cutting balloon angioplasty, and balloon angioplasty with stent placement can be used. Follow-up recommendations are physical examination, Doppler ultrasound every 6 months for the first year and annually thereafter. Thank you.